Hi, a few people have asked me how I am cranking out my masks so quickly. So I'm going to do a tutorial. I'm guessing it'll probably take, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes since I'm talking through things. I've got my son helping me out with a lot of this stuff, which is great. I didn't at first, but then he stepped in. He's 11, almost 12, and he follows instructions pretty well. So I'll tell you the parts that he's doing. Maybe you have a little helper who can help you as well. So this first part, I have them both the outside fabric and the inside fabric already cut to 9 inches by 6 inches. And this is for the adult size mask. Instead of elastic, I'm actually using some spandex blend. It's like a thick swimsuit material, I think. Amazing stretch. The thing is, when it's yanked, it curls into a pretty tight tube, which will be great, but it holds its stretch really well. And I've gotten some feedback that it's holding up really nicely in the laundry as well. So we start out by yanking about the last 2 inches of it to get it into a curl and matching it up from corner to corner. We're going to end up with 4 ties on this. And the reason why I went with ties is because I want to make sure that these are super flexible and able to fit on lots of different heads. If somebody really wants to create ties that go around their ears, they certainly can, or they can go around the back of their head, which is what I prefer. And I've heard that many medical professionals are preferring that as well, since it doesn't put strain on their ears all day long. So I get those lined up. I didn't make this part curled because I actually want to be able to put a pin through all of this. I was wasting a lot of time by putting 4 pins. When I put these on straight, exactly where I want them to end up when I sew, I was putting too many pins in, and I was losing a lot of time both putting the pins in and taking the pins out. So when I do this cross pattern, I'm able to just put 1 pin through. So I match it up. I kind of press it down. The 2 cottons will stick together pretty nicely. And then I throw a pin through all layers. 1 pin. That's it. And this is a part that my son has really been able to do a great job of. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on the sewing machine, so I'm going to talk you through it right now. I usually start sewing about here. I make sure I back up and then go forward. Otherwise, you get some little loops that are going to pop out the seam later. I sew, and as I'm sewing, so I'd be feeding it through like this, I take my finger and I actually shove this out of my way. And I sew up to here, lift up my foot, pivot my work, and then I sew across that. It has maintained its tube. The tube portion, the closed portion, is towards the picture or the nice fabric. When it all comes out later, it looks a lot nicer that way. Not something just really fret about if you're trying to make them quickly, but for the ones that I'm selling, I'm being a little more careful about that. So I push it, and then I stitch, 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 stitch. And as I'm getting closer to here, I take this and I yank it up. And then I pivot just after I've reached the ridge of the spandex. So I'm over the spandex and I'm back down to just 2 layers of cotton. Stop. My needle is set to just stay in the down position when I stop sewing. I lift my foot and then I pivot it around. And I stitch, 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 stitch. When I get to here, I use 1 hand. I just keep on going. I don't even stop. I use my hand to pull it out of the way. Now remember, the foot and the needle will be holding my fabric in place while I'm doing it. So I can easily rotate that around. Again, then down here, same thing. I'm moving these to end up like that. So initially they're out the corners. This works because my son is making huge stacks of these. I set out stacks of the pre-cut lining layer and stacks of whatever pattern fabric I want, and he just assembles while he watches TV. It's fantastic. So then on this is the final side. I come back. Remember, I started about here, and I come back about to here. I leave maybe 1 to 2 inches, probably more like 2. I come in and then I reverse. Again, you want a good reverse in here, otherwise you're going to deal with some loopy stitches. So I'm going to do that really quick and then talk through other stuff again. Pivot. I'm sewing about, I don't know, maybe a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Doesn't really matter, really. Close is good enough. By the time you get all your pleats in and everything, not even going to be able to tell if it's uneven, whatever. Really, do not fuss. These are going to do a great job even if they're a little bit off. don't want to spend too much time on them. So you want to crank them out. So there we have it. There. And you can see it's imperfect. Pull the pin, set it aside. Now it's time to turn. Now, because I reversed at the beginning and the end, I shouldn't get the little loops that are kind of annoying, and you'll see what I mean, and maybe it's not important to you, but I like it clean, and when I see those little loops, it bugs me, and then I take extra time to clip them, which is just dumb. This is all about saving time. So I stick my finger in and I push out the corners a little bit, being careful not to just cram a bunch of the excess strapping into the corner, or you're going to have a giant bump there that's kind of hard to stitch through. So I pushed it out, and you can see this is kind of sticking out. The nice thing is when I start sewing, I'm actually going to drop my needle in right here, way at the corner. And I'm going to do a few stitches, and my needle's going to stay down. I'm going to pause for a second, and then I'm going to pull this kind of tight against the needle, and I'm going to stick my finger in there, and it's going to, look at that. It laid down perfectly. It lines right up with the seam that's inside, and I'm just going to top stitch really close to the edge without falling over, just enough to make sure that I'm catching both fabrics. So I'm going to come up around here, and then I'm going to pivot. And while my needle is down, but my foot is up, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push that up underneath, and then I'm going to push that the other way. And I'm going to stitch across there. And then depending on how nice it really needs to end up in the end. If it needs to be perfect, then I'm going to pick up the presser foot, rotate it around, and stitch back down, and keep going back and forth. In the end, I want stitch, 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 and then pick it back up and go down this end, make the corner, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create matching pleats going back the other way. And then when I finish here, I'm going to actually end up stitching right over where I started, which keeps these from unraveling on each other. And then I'm going to clip all the tails. So be right back. So there are my 3 stitches. I'm sticking my finger in the hole to flatten down the fabric, and off I go. Okay, I'm at the corner now, lifting up my foot, making the pleat one way, making the pleat the other way. Now while I'm holding it down, I'm not going to pivot back and forth, because right now I'm using white thread on relatively white fabric, and it's going to be fine even if my stitches don't perfectly line up as I go across that same line 3 times. I've made some that are navy blue with white stitching, and on those I tend to pick up the foot and rotate around, so I'm always stitching forwards and not just using my backward stitching, because it really shows on that. And if I want it to look nice, then I gotta take that time. Okay, that's my cut sound. Oh, and look at me, I didn't bring in my good scissors. How about these? So all of my tails, my thread tails, ended up really close together over here. Ugh, and that one tried to escape me. We'll see if these these scissors don't even really cut. That's why they're hanging on the wall. Okay, I'll just put those crummy scissors back. So there it is. Now, when a person wears it, they can put it on and they can, well, check this out. So stretchy. So these were 8 inches long. It's going to really, how long you make those is going to really depend on how stretchy your fabric is. So I gauged it based on where I knew this mask was going to end up on my face, and then I took a piece and I stretched up around my head and then gave myself extra length for ties. I wanted to fit snug but not uncomfortably tight, so I left a lot there. Plus, these are going, I'm donating these all over the place and giving them to friends and whatnot, so I wanted to make sure that they fit all manner of big and small noggins. So you might tie one up high and then one down low, or like I did, now I'm going to bring in another one that looks very similar. This one's mine. You could also just tie them all together in one big lump. So also tell you that mine has a little added thing, which I don't recommend you offer this to people because it takes a few extra minutes. And I don't honestly think it added that much value. I put in a little strip of bias tape across the nose here and then shove some pipe cleaner in it. But, so I'm going to grab my camera. Hi. And sorry about that. Here's what it looks like. You can see I just have mine all tied together. One goes above my ear, one goes below. I think it fits well. It hugs my face. It's really annoying. And I think that's what a mask is supposed to be. And that's how you make a mask really fast.